to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Wednesday, March 6th. China calls on North and South Korea to exercise restraint. What this US congressman says will discourage human rights violators, and China's latest attempt to cool the property market. China called for a restraint and de-escalation of tensions on the Korean Peninsula today. It follows North Korea's threat to end a shaky armistice with South Korea. A checkered ceasefire since 1953 has so far prevented major fighting between the two sides, but now North Korea is saying it would drop nukes on South Korea. The northern state is upset over South Korea's joint military drills with the US. In response, South Korea said it would target North Korea's top leadership if it dared to attack. As North Korea's biggest ally, the Chinese regime is finding it harder to contain its volatile neighbor. China is expected to vote for an expansion of UN sanctions against North Korea this Thursday. Reports say the US and China have agreed on the terms. They will make it harder for North Korea to move funds around and step up the inspections of cargoes going in and out of the country. The Chinese regime has resisted tougher punishments against the North while trying to maintain a working relationship. How well the latest sanctions will work will partly depend on how well China enforces them. Timed with yesterday's start of National People's Congress, American NGOs Freedom House and China Aid held a joint press conference. They asked what are the main human rights challenges in China today, and importantly, what can the US and Europe do about it?
Nothing angers dictators quite like being held accountable for their crimes. That's what U.S. Congressman Chris Smith said on Tuesday in Washington, D.C. At this event, with Chinese human rights defenders in attendance, he raised a way to discourage perpetrators of serious crimes, like persecuting human rights lawyers, by blocking them from getting U.S. visas.
We're not kidding. If you're an abuser, if you treat Chen Guangzhen or Gao Zhejiang the way you do, we encourage our embassy and everyone else to feed into the creation of lists that will then put those people on a banned list in terms of coming into the United States.
In 2012, U.S. lawmakers passed the Magnitsky Act. It blocks certain Russian perpetrators from getting U.S. visas. The challenge is to make it more international, further reaching, and, of course, actually get implemented. That's where the European Parliament comes in.
What I'm trying to establish is whether we can have some sort of transatlantic cooperation, especially in relation to countries like China.
By targeting specific abusers, mcmillan-scott and Smith hope they will discourage others from participating in future rights violations.
The U.S. Congress adoption of the Magnitsky Act, I believe that should apply more widely, that where those who are oppressing people like Gao Zhejiang, torturing in China, should not be allowed visas to the United States or to Europe.
In time, he hopes they'll also be punished by the International Criminal Court.
The Chinese regime has long been trying to lower real estate prices in the mainland, fearing it's a bubble that may burst. As one of his last acts as premier, Wen Jiabao announced new measures that are designed to cool the market, but many are skeptical they will be enough to really make a difference. Here's the report.
Chinese leaders have their eyes set on cooling the property market. On March 1st, the Communist Party State Council announced a series of control measures to lower housing prices. On Monday, real estate stocks fell by the most in almost 5 years. One of the major fixes announced by outgoing Premier Wen Jiabao was to tighten the 20% tax on capital gains. That tax already existed before, but was easy to get around.
Perhaps Wen Jiabao was pulling a final punch to add to his political assets. In the past, he had enough time to bring down the housing prices. I think these policies will be short-lived. China's real estate prices will not fall. Even the basic real estate pattern will not change.
The housing problem is nothing new. Since 2003, Chinese leaders have announced 9 sets of control measures to address it. But as one steps out a decade later, concerns over a property bubble has only become more pronounced. One factor fueling China's real estate market is that it's a major revenue spinner for local governments. So while China's central authorities want to cool the market, local officials may have their own ideas.
In January and February this year, the land sold in Beijing is already more than half of the year before. It means there is still a large volume of land transactions, supporting the government's revenue. Land transactions push a high housing market. The government is happy.
Other measures announced on Friday include higher loan rates and restrictions on home buying. In response, China has seen a rush of people to real estate centers. They want to register their properties before the new rules go into force. Currently, there is no word on when or how the control measures will be implemented.
A senior Chinese banking official has indicated regulators will allow the yuan's exchange rate to be more flexible. Yi Gang, the deputy governor of the People's Bank of China, said the yuan's exchange rate will be, quote, more balanced and flexible and basically stable. China's trading partners have long pushed the country to loosen control of the yuan. Critics say by capping how much the currency can go up in value, it artificially makes Chinese products cheaper and creates an unfair competitive advantage against other exporters. Speaking on the sidelines of the National People's Congress, Yi claims the yuan is now close to its equilibrium and that China's central bank has reduced intervention in the foreign exchange market. Reuters reports, however, that currency dealers have still seen aggressive buying and selling by Chinese authorities. And still to come on NTD China News, what can outspend China's military? A tragic end to a carjacking in northeastern China, and IKEA pulls almond cakes after bacteria is found in China.
What has lasted 5,000 years was once almost lost. Now, the world awaits the divine culture's return.
And welcome back. What is the greatest threat facing the Chinese Communist Party in 2013? Well, judging by the new budget, is the Chinese people. China's internal security budget is swelling, topping even the party's military spending.
The Chinese regime unveiled its defense budget yesterday during the opening of the 12th National People's Congress. It will increase by more than 10% to $114 billion. But the domestic security budget under the Political and Legal Affairs Committee will swell to almost $124 billion. Guangdong rights activist Chen Qitong believes that the budget is mostly for monitoring ordinary people.
The government monitors everybody. Even the 10-year-old daughter of Zhang Li was arrested and detained by public security. Such a big expense is needed. How can't they increase it? The situation is now like a pressure cooker. When the pressure is too much, the government will release the gas a little bit. In fact, the core has not changed. The stability maintenance fee will be increased every year until the CCP falls from power.
The internal security budget is the highest in the past 3 years.
The draft budget explains the unique phenomenon under the CCP's dictatorship. It also indicates that the CCP's rule is very unstable. The inside of the CCP has already gone to the edge of collapse.
Most recently, police forces have surrounded the village of Shangpu in Guangdong province. Villagers there blockaded the central square and called for democratic elections to protest corrupt land dealings by their local party secretary.
A carjacking in northeastern China's Jilin province turned into a tragedy this week after the thief killed a baby that was left in the car he stole. The case has sparked outrage across China, but it looks like local authorities aren't prepared to let the discussion continue.
Mourners gathered in northeastern China to remember a 2-month-old baby killed after a carjacking in Changchun, Jilin province. The case has shocked the public as yet another example of a society losing its moral fiber. Even as questions roar over how the carjacker could strangle such a young baby, it appears authorities in Changchun want to quell the discussion. This notice, telling the media to restrict coverage of the story, appeared on China's microblog Sina Weibo. It includes directives like no front-page coverage, no special reports on radio and television, and no questioning the police's work. The authenticity of the document could not be verified, but it has caught the attention of censors. The notice has been removed after each time it was posted. The case of baby Haobo began on Monday. His parents had left him in a car with the engine running. Being absent for just 10 minutes, the parents returned to an empty parking space. After a mass media appeal and manhunt, the carjacker, Zhou Shijun, turned himself into the police on Tuesday. He said he strangled the baby after hearing him cry and buried him in the snow. Aside from the outpour of grief and anger over the baby's murder, Changchun residents have also started to ask questions. This Weibo user asks, What I don't understand is Changchun streets are full of surveillance cameras, but police couldn't track down one car after the incident. The media has been told to keep tight-lipped on China's Skynet project, a system of security cameras covering city streets. And if citizens were hoping for a follow-up article explaining the details, they are in for a disappointment. According to the Weibo Post, Chinese media has been instructed to stop covering the story after the first day.
According to Reporters Without Borders, China ranks as one of the worst countries for press freedom this year. But for every rule, there is an exception. In a little town in Hebei province, an independent newspaper is managing to survive.
The furniture is easy to assemble, and the reputation even easier to disassemble. IKEA is withdrawing chocolate almond cakes from its stores in 23 countries after high levels of bacteria were detected in China. Chinese state-run Xinhua news agency reported on Tuesday that Shanghai custom agents burned 2 tons of the cake. They were confiscated after 2 batches of the cake were found to contain high levels of the coliform bacteria in December.
It's unbelievable when I heard this news reporting IKEA food contains fecal bacteria in their cakes. It's unimaginable that such a big-name brand would offer food with fecal bacteria.
Coliform bacteria itself isn't dangerous, but its presence could mean that other harmful bacteria from the soil, water, or fecal matter could be present. IKEA says its supplier did not find the more dangerous E. coli bacteria in the cake. The tainted almond cakes come right on the heels of another scandal. IKEA has stopped sales of its world-famous Swedish meatballs after tests in the Czech Republic showed some contained horse meat. They've been pulled off the shelves throughout Europe and Asia. Consumer faith in China is on the decline. After years of struggling with a slew of tainted food products made in China, foreign name brands have also been scandalized. Most recently, the Chinese suppliers of chickens to KFC's Yum brands and McDonald's were discovered to contain small amounts of chemical residue. There have so far been no reports of anyone getting sick from the IKEA almond cakes.
And that's all we have time for in this NTD China news. But you can see more of our China coverage on our website ntd.tv or subscribe to our YouTube channel NTD on China. Coming up next is a segment of the 9 commentaries on the Communist Party. Stay tuned.